Welcome to Brandstorm, the podcast that talks to the people behind America's brands. I'm Dan Trzynski, president of Platypus Advertising and Design.
And I'm Nancy Christopher, PR director at Platypus. With so many ways to watch video content these days, it's a great time for the consumer. It's also become an increasingly difficult time for the local media buyer. Our guest today is focused on making video advertising easier. Please welcome Michael Beach, CEO of Cross Screen Media. Thanks for joining us, Michael.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and what your company actually does.
Yeah, so Cross Screen Media, we were founded in 2017 as a spin-out of an agency that I actually founded almost 10 years ago called Targeted Victory here in the Washington, D.C. area, which was primarily a digital agency focused on the political and corporate advocacy sector.
I think you're glad to be out of that right now, right?
Yeah, that's quite the circus. I thought it could get busier, but it's gotten a little crazier in the last couple of years.
Yes.
We were really focused on audience targeting. And so for the first 4 years of the agency, we're really focused entirely on digital, but really kept running the same challenge of our clients would ask us for, what the budget should be on digital. And we would write kind of a budget in silo. And then the television buyer would write a budget. And then our client would have to kind of decide what the mix was. It was really a zero-sum game for both groups. And so we started making investments in set-top box data and other things to start to put television into a similar kind of audience-based currency to television. And in 2013, we actually launched our first advanced TV platform. At that point, we were really focused on just making the buying and the planning as efficient as possible across all screens, but still kept running that same challenge of, how do you decide what the budget is? If you already knew what you wanted to put on broadcast or local cable, or at that point, mobile desktop or social, we had a great solution. If you were trying to ask that question in the first place, it was a challenge. And so at the end of 2016, took that software and spun it out to a separate company and exited the agency and saw an opportunity to kind of sell this product as a software package to a wider market. And that's kind of where we are today.
We get that question all the time. How much of my money should be going toward connected TV or OTT versus traditional versus social, digital, programmatic, retargeting? I mean, my answer is always depends on what you want to accomplish and then dig deeper. So do you have a better answer?
Yeah, it's complicated, but I think really we try to narrow it down to we only focus on video. So I think when you try to add other elements, it makes it more complicated. Some people are trying to add display, and we even have customers that are trying to do direct mail and other mediums that they're using. We really focus on video, and we look at it in 5 pieces. So you've got broadcast, you've got cable, connected TV, mobile desktop, and then social are kind of the 5 big buckets that people buy. And obviously there's kind of variations inside of that. And really what we found, and this was kind of a learning from the political space, is that it's not only what you're trying to accomplish, but it's really who your target is. And then, if you're trying to target, one group of people that are, heavy digital consumption, if you're targeting in-market auto, that audience might consume content completely different in one market than the next. And on top of that, especially your local TV prices are so drastically different in each market. When you look at it on the CPM or the impression level, there can be 40 or 50% variance on a normal day between 2 markets that reach the exact same target. So not only does your target consume content differently, your objective might be different, but also the cost to reach that person could be completely different by market.
That's still confusing to me. But yeah. I have to say, one of the things that really intrigued me, Michael, was that you said that these stations, broadcast TV, was moving away from ratings and moving towards impression-based selling. What do you mean by that? And why is that significant for local media buyers?
Yeah, so there's 2 things. So traditionally, local TV's been bought on a gross rating point. Challenge being that rating is usually only done against an age and gender demo. So it's not necessarily tied to the strategic target that you're trying to reach. And the second thing, especially at the local level, once you get outside these large markets, is that Nielsen, kind of traditional ratings currency, the majority of content, about 70% of the programming available to buy local TV advertising on, they don't have enough of a sample to get a rating on.
Yeah, exactly. So if it's like men 25-54 in some program, it's probably less than 1 rating point, which kind of makes it look like there's a tenth
of a rating
point. Yeah,
nobody's
watching it. It looks like that.
Or they're not watching it when it's being aired anymore. That's the thing.
Well, it's just too small a pool to be able to measure. So it
exactly
registers as a zero.
Sure.
And so now you get impressions, now that again gives the ability for the buyer and the seller to transact on that inventory. The next phase is now to go from impressions, which is kind of the move everyone's making today, to impressions to target, which is something that our software does that allows you to say, okay, how much in market for a Honda sedan, how many impressions are on this show? And then that allows you to then compare cost-wise to digital, because that's how you're buying connected TV and mobile desktop and social video. That allows for the rise of the holistic buyer, which is what we think the future is.
No question. Will local television stations have to change their content strategy? I'm the poster child for this because I'm baby boomer generation, but am also now a more recent cord cutter. I have Hulu. I watch Netflix. I watch Amazon Prime. I watch streaming television on Hulu. I watch live television via Hulu. I can't think of one.
Do you do anything else in
television.
Your day?
Well, and I'm like, I love the name of your company, Cross Streaming Media, because again, you could take a picture of me, and my wife calls it the command module. I have my iPhone running, my iPad running, my laptop going, and then the smart television going on, so I could be 4 screens at one time. And we actually had somebody on from Nielsen on the show about a year ago, and I said, so what am I being recorded as? Who gets my, when I have the game on with no sound on the big TV, and then I'm watching a movie on Netflix on my iPad while I'm doing a how-to video on YouTube on my laptop, what am I really watching?
Do you even know what you're watching? I
Sure.
mean, there's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Broadcast probably gets the most attention because everyone kind of see the ratings and the decline in ratings over the years. But everyone has this problem in that at the general level, the time spent with video, it's going up a couple minutes per year. So it's not a dramatic rise because there's only so much time in the day that people can spend. But the supply of content is growing exponentially. And so I think last year you had almost 600 scripted shows were created in the year, and maybe 10 years ago it would have been less than 200. And so you've got a 300 or 400% increase in the content that we can have, and this year it's going to blow that number away.
It's a great time to be a B or C actor. There's just
absolutely, and in production,
so many opportunities. It's wonderful.
Says the theater major.
Yeah, I wish I would have had that when I was younger. So.
Yeah, and the insight that we got in what I think the future is for the ad seller, because the supply of content's rising faster than the time, which means everyone essentially is going to have fewer impressions to sell on average than they did before, because ad loads are also going to come down. They got to figure out a way to make those impressions more valuable. And the way they do that is to actually tailor that impression to the audience. And this is an insight that we got out of politics, was that once we were able to evaluate who our target was and how we could reach them effectively, we were willing to pay through the roof for that impression. We were willing to pay more than anybody else because we had a better idea who they were. And as an ad seller, you need to figure out, okay, well, how do I now make my impressions more interesting to agencies and everybody else? If you're trying to sell to everybody, that's just not going to work. It's not going to be a good business model moving forward. And I think that's the thing where the sell side customers are coming to us, are saying, well, how do we communicate our inventory in terms of audience?
So you're now able to deliver an audience that for a fact is in the market for a Honda Accord.
Yeah, you look at just math
versus just people that are female, 25 to 49. A lot of those people watch Grey's Anatomy, but we don't know that they're necessarily in the market for a Honda Accord.
Yeah, absolutely. But now you're paying a little bit for all of those people. Instead, You should be paying a lot for the person that you want. And it, again, doesn't need to be this really tight universe, but it needs to be much tighter than it is now. And that's a win-win for everybody.
Correct.
So what do you feel, Michael, is really the benefit of impression-based selling?
I mean, first thing that's going to happen are traditional agencies are going to buy more digital. They're now going to feel more comfortable buying digital because the both will be in the same general currency. And again, we feel like there's another step of getting impression to the target is the next. You'll see that in the next few years, that'll be dominant. Digital agencies or buyers will start to buy TV. Right now, it's as hard as it is for a traditional agency to buy digital. It's equally as hard for a digital agency to buy TV, because you talk about gross rating point to somebody 25 who's bought Facebook their whole life. They have no idea what that means.
Right.
So you're essentially going to double the demand for both platforms, because now you're going to have more people buying digital and you have more people buying TV.
So how many impressions does it take to get your message noticed?
Is there a minimum compared to the traditional reach and frequency model? So all of us old timers that have been involved with traditional television buying for years, it's
you want to see that ad 7 times.
Right. Well, yeah, you want a 7 frequency and you want a 68% reach in the target demo, and that was the language of the past, right? Now, are there standards I guess, that you should try to achieve?
I don't know their standards. Like on our buy side customers, there's a pretty wide variance between even that default kind of mode. We have some people have a higher threshold for reach percentage and frequency, and we have some that have a lower. The key problem that everyone's run into with digital is that television has low targeting, high attention. The people watch the ads, you don't have a viewability problem. Digital has high targeting and low attention. It's the opposite problem. The reason everyone's so excited about connected TV is connected TV, in theory, has the targeting of digital and the attention of TV, and so everyone feels comfortable. And so one thing that is kind of a key use case that gets used a lot in our software is to decide how much attention you want in order to measure digital. So a lot of people say, we want a minimum of 5 seconds of this 30-second ad to be watched for it to count. So it's a higher threshold than an impression, but that then allows the person to have comfort that it's more of an apples to apples. And it might be, red apples to green apples. It's not perfect,
Right.
but the other way, it just doesn't work because people say, well, that impression's not as good as this impression.
How does your company make local television buying easier for brands?
First thing we take is either your customer data, if you have a CRM file, or we have a national consumer file with 1,500 plus attributes on average available in the platform that you can build your own strategic audiences. So if you wanted, in market for this brand of car, this income level, within 2.5 miles of this location, you can build that audience out, then show you your different buying options, TV rating against that target. So you're no longer looking at a GRP against 18 to 49-year-olds. You're looking at we call a TRP against that target. We then also show that in impressions and impressions to the target. And then we show your options on digital. And then the key thing is we say, then we run through what we call screen preference, where we actually take how that target consumes content to figure out the optimal frequency, the way to balance frequency across screens, which is really the hardest thing to do right now. And that's what gets used the most. That allows you to write a cross-screen plan because at the end of the day, the brand that is the agency's customer doesn't really care how much digital or TV you buy. They want to sell more products.
Correct.
And we are essentially helping build cross-screen teams at either traditional agencies that want to go to digital or digital agencies that want to go to television is kind of our core use case on the buy side.
And where do you get all your data?
Oh, many different places. I mean, we're licensing set-top box data from aggregators. We're buying media consumption data from a variety of sources. We source a national consumer file from Axiom. Basically any data source on media consumption that we can get our hands on, we license. And again, we operate on a software model, so we take on a huge fixed cost that is, as a former agency founder, I would have never wanted to take on myself.
Correct.
But we're able to spread it out across a wide customer base, and we sell it as a product.
That makes sense.
Does it make TV buying more affordable to smaller advertisers?
Oh, it's much more affordable because, if you go back to that 70% use case, there's so much inventory on local TV that nobody buys because it doesn't get a Nielsen rating, that even if you were buying a low dollar, low frequency buyer, you could find people and figure out how much you can reach. Just that alone is a no-brainer.
What kind of data is currently available across the various video platforms? You said, let's go through them slower. You said set-top box, that you're obviously then getting that from cable and satellite providers. Name the other ones again.
So media consumption habits. So a lot of the data
Where does that come from?
Services like MRI and Scarborough are two big ones that are out there that you're probably familiar with. There's others, especially on the digital side, that are rising up. Another data set that's newer but is becoming more mainstream is called ACR, automatic content recognition, which is actually the smart TV itself capturing what's viewed. That allows you to capture digital consumption, and then is being used in a lot of the attribution platforms, which is kind of this third wave of what we see coming. And really, that's kind of, we look at the video market as there's 3 phases that are happening right now. What we're in today, we call demo plus some audience, which is where 50% or more of the video advertising is being bought against age and gender. That's the world we're still in today. Probably the next 3 years, it will shift to where we will be in what we call audience in some attribution, or in some demo, where audience targeting will be more than 50% of video spend. And actually the lion's share of that growth is coming in the TV space, about how much TV we think will be bought against audiences as opposed to age and gender. And then the third phase is audience in some attribution, where attribution becomes a key component of how much foot traffic did this drive, or how many actual transactions did this drive, as opposed to just using kind of traditional branding metrics like reach and frequency. And that's further down the road. You're seeing a lot of companies pop up that do that now. That's what kind of one of the hottest areas for investment, but it won't be probably more than 50% of the market for 5+ years.
So you say this is much more affordable for smaller advertisers, but what about the TV stations? Do they make more or less with this new model?
I think they make more. Really, the trends in TV, you got to separate into two things. There's audience buying and selling, and there's programmatic. And programmatic is basically taking their inventory and turning it into an electronic exchange or automating the workflow. What we're talking about really is just looking at their inventory in terms of audiences. In the short term, they'll generate more revenue just from being able to sell all their inventory, not just what they get a rating on now. The smarter stations are coming to us saying, how can we get the most out of each impression? You got to know that, okay, the direct-to-consumer market for mattresses is getting really competitive, and Facebook and Instagram prices have gone up 2 or 3x in the last year. Can we help X group sell a mattress cheaper than that? Yes, we can, right? But we got to communicate to that new buyer and their people in market to buy this product and not in 18 to 49-year-old adults. That's the opportunity. But initially, they'll make more money from just selling all their inventory.
Okay, now I'm going to sound like it's all about the money here, but what does it cost to use your services? And what kind of turnaround time is typical for an ad agency?
The pricing varies. It's a very quick turnaround. I mean, we usually onboard people within a couple of weeks. It's a self-serve platform. So everything we talk about here, you can do yourself. It's very easy. Usually we start with 3 to 5 users in an agency to start, and then it kind of grows from there. But really, it's the use case for a local agency on the buy side. The product was specifically built for that in my old agency, so we know that use case cold. How you silo data and how you break up teams and how you work with multiple brands and all these different things were things that we had to go through as well today, and that's again why that was the market that we got initial traction in.
Is there software you have to buy to interface with your company?
No, it all runs in your browser. So either on desktop, and we have a mobile version as well.
So it's a dashboard.
But it's based on the number of users using that dashboard, the cost?
Number of markets is the primary driver.
Number of markets. Okay.
Yep.
I see television stations, billboard companies, radio stations. Everybody seems to be wanting to sell you OTT and programmatic.
Gas stations.
Yeah.
Right.
It's crazy how I think everybody's in this business now. How do you decipher a local advertiser? Okay, let's just skip the agency side for a second. How do you decide who's selling you what, and who do you trust, and who do you buy this stuff from?
Well, you point out a core product, and that's a bet our company's made, is that things are going to only get more complicated, not less.
Right.
And so if it's confusing today, it's going to be twice as confusing 2 years from now. And really, that's just the explosion of options. And so it's you got to have one place to kind of bring it all together and to help you kind of make decisions. And again, everybody kind of has their own general theory on that. Everyone's not the same. And then it's the same with video. Some people might value Facebook advertising more than local broadcast, or they might think cable is better than mobile desktop. And I think that really what allow you to do is bring all that inventory together and say, okay, how does this target? What does it cost? How much does it target consume content? And then you can kind of tweak it from there. Because really what you find is that you can change allocations, 3 or 4 points here or there, and it doesn't change your reach and frequency 3 to 5%. It's with these dramatic differences, right? Like if you should have put 35% of your money on digital and you put 20% on digital, you're going to have a big impact on reach and frequency. Or when we were a digital agency, we would have people that would have a set percentage that they wanted to put on digital. They say, well, I'm going to put 30% on digital every time. Sometimes it should have been 0, and sometimes it should have been 100%. But they just picked the same number every time because they weren't changing it based on market conditions, who the target is, or any of those things. I think that's only going to become more complicated as gas stations and the lobby of doctors' offices and all these places are selling video that are coming up now, because we haven't even seen the video market where it's going to be. I mean, it's just getting started. Like we've seen the growth of digital and social in the last 10 years. But the video market's about to go through that level of transition, or it's going through it now. It looks different because the television market's so big. It's $60+ billion that it doesn't feel as big of a shift as we saw with display and social, but it's actually even bigger.
So, Michael, what's the best way to work with a company like yours? Let's say I'm a media buyer and I've been selling to one of my clients for 20 years or 15 years. It's gone great, but obviously things are getting more complicated. There's so many other ways to go to consume video content. Do you take a standard buy that has been done do you do some sort of analysis of the market? How does it work?
Yeah, I mean, usually when we do a proposal or, maybe a second meeting with somebody, we usually take an exact use case that they have, this type of advertiser, this budget, this goal, and run a bunch of different scenarios. Again, we show right in front of the people and show how fast this is and how non-labor intensive it is to do this, with software that's built specifically for that. And really, it takes the fear out of doing something like this. And then the second thing that we do that's strategic is say, all right, what's the easiest win? You're not going to go from just buying television advertising on Monday to Tuesday waking up and being an expert in Snapchat video. No. Right? Like, it's what's the process to where like that, this is where your business wants to get to, where you're completely screen agnostic, right? Where you don't care
what show they're watching. They could be watching cat videos or the Fireplace channel if they're in the market for a mattress or a car or whatever, correct?
Exactly. And this is one thing, we went through this, transformation as an agency, and then we've seen this happen dozens of times with other agencies is, okay, let's pick out small wins to start and build up some momentum, all with the idea that down the line, you're going to want to have this. And everyone's different. You don't start off with the same person being cross-screen. Phase one is you just offer both screens in the same agency. And then phase two might be that you have the same team, that maybe you have a digital person and a TV person on the same team putting plans together. And then phase three is the same person understands both. And we've seen that happen again many, many times. As a business leader, you don't want to disrupt your team, but you've got to get them to where they need to be for the future. And that's, again, the same thing that we went through, when we were building the software in-house.
This has been really helpful, and I love learning from guys such as yourself, and we've been messing around with this stuff in Platypus more and more as the years go on and evolving with the times. So I'm looking forward to offline learning a little bit more about your company as well. Is there a way the best way for people to connect with you?
Yeah, so company is at crossgreen.media. We do a weekly newsletter at staythescreens.com. I think my contact info is on both places. Definitely reach out to us. We'd love to hear about your current environment is and like what you're looking to accomplish, and see if we can be helpful.
How many of your type of company are there out there? Is there a lot of competition?
If you look at your kind of marketing, technology, graphics, there's a lot of companies. They're all solving kind of different needs. What makes us unique is that we were kind of born in the local space. If we hadn't done politics, we wouldn't have done all 210 media markets.
Sure.
Our worldview is just a little different because, for the last 10 years, I've had more buy go through our system in Dayton, Ohio than New York City. We're probably the only company, like national advertising company, that has that use case, right? Because that's where our fights were and where our customers were spending their money. And so we had to be strong in every media market. We just couldn't be focused on, the top 10.
Well, I'm glad I ran across you because this is really fascinating and there's a lot to learn. And I appreciate you coming on today to talk to us about it.
Yeah, thanks, Michael.
Happily. Appreciate your time.
And if you have any questions for Dan and me about today's episode, please feel free to contact us on our LinkedIn pages. Please don't forget to share, review, and subscribe to Brandstorm.
This is Dan Trzynski along with Nancy Christopher at Platypus Advertising and Design, an awesome company that creates perceptions that influence choice. We hope you'll join us next week for another episode of Brandstorm.